What happened when an undercover CEO walked into his own water park disguised as a lifeguard and uncovered a culture of silence, shortcuts, and hidden courage? Welcome, brilliant listeners. You have a rare ear for stories that matter. Today's tale isn't just about water slides and sunscreen. It's about legacy, leadership, and the quiet bravery of one employee who refused to look the other way. If you believe in second chances, doing the right thing when it's hard, and building something worth passing on, this story is for you. Sit back, stay curious, and let's dive into the slide to truth. Jackson Rivera stood outside the gates of Cascade Bay's Mesa branch, a place he once dreamed into existence with his late brother. The morning sun shimmered on the water slides beyond the fence, their once vibrant colors dulled by neglect. This park, like the others, carried the Rivera name, a name once synonymous with safe family fun and integrity. But lately that name has become harder to say with pride. Reports had trickled in, injury complaints, guest refunds denied, rising employee turnover. The data felt off, but what struck Jackson most were the messages from guests who said they felt ignored, disrespected, even unsafe. He hadn't stepped foot on this location's grounds in over 2 years, and now, at 47, he wasn't coming in as the polished CEO. No entourage, no press photos. Today, Jackson was just Jay, an aging seasonal hire in a worn-out lifeguard shirt, board shorts, and a shaggy beach wig that made him almost unrecognizable. In his backpack were a reusable water bottle, a fake ID badge, and a copy of the employee handbook he had once helped write. He adjusted his mirrored sunglasses and took a slow breath. This wasn't a PR stunt, it was a reckoning. Cascade Bay was built on the idea that families deserve joy and safety at a price they could trust, that kids could laugh without fear, and the staff could work with dignity. But somewhere along the way the company had grown, and with growth came distance, delegation, disconnection, and now whispers of a culture gone wrong. Jackson wasn't here to lecture or send emails. He was here to feel the place, smell the chlorine, hear the staff talk when they thought no one important was listening. He pushed open the side entrance and walked through as quietly as any new hire. Music played over the PA system, the scent of sunscreen and fried food filled the air, and kids screamed with delight in the distance. But underneath the familiar sounds was something else: tension, an edge, a tiredness in the eyes of the staff at the gate, a forced smile from a supervisor scanning passes. Jackson felt it immediately. This wasn't the part he remembered, and maybe, just maybe, it wasn't the company he thought he'd built. But he hadn't come to mourn that fact, he'd come to change it, starting now. The moment Jackson, disguised as Jay, stepped onto the main grounds of Cascade Bay Mesa, the cracks beneath the surface began to show. The park still looked like a tropical dream from a distance, palm-shaped shade umbrellas fluttering in the breeze, lazy rivers curving past artificial rock formations, and lifeguards perched on tall chairs, silhouetted against the sun. But closer up, it was clear that the paradise was fraying. Paint peeled along handrails, and faded safety signs hung crooked near the wave pool. A trio of lifeguards gossiped loudly behind the cabana station, barely glancing at the kids in the water. No one approached him, no one welcomed him. Jackson had once prided himself on training frontline staff to greet guests like family, but here, staff avoided eye contact, and supervisors floated by with clipboards, but no direction. Jay was eventually flagged down by a shift supervisor who handed him a trash picker and assigned him to perimeter duty. No orientation, no welcome kit, no walkthrough, just, you know the drill, right? And a vague gesture toward a service path lined with discarded flip-flops and crushed paper cups. He nodded and walked on, blending into the rhythms of the staff. It didn't take long to notice the employee dynamics. The alpha on deck was Eli Foster, the lead lifeguard, early 30s, tanned and charming but with a hard edge. He barked orders and made backhanded jokes about guests, brushing off safety protocols with a smirk. Jackson watched him flirt with a young mother while simultaneously dismissing a junior guard's request for more first aid supplies. "It's a scratch, not open-heart surgery," Eli scoffed. Then there was Carla Nguyen, working at guest services, late 20s, hair pulled back, eyes sharp behind her reflective sunglasses. She stood out, not because she was loud, but because she was present. When a child cried after dropping their ice cream, she knelt beside them, replaced it without charge, and whispered something that made them laugh. Guests smiled at her, but the way she glanced at the manager's office window, guarded, cautious, told Jackson everything. She was good at her job, but something had her watching her back. As Jackson patrolled the edge of the lazy river, he spotted a cracked pavement corner marked only by a faded cone. It wasn't just cosmetic issues anymore, it was a safety hazard. He jotted a mental note. This wasn't mismanagement, this was neglect. And it had gone unnoticed far too long. It happened near the Thunder Loop Slide Tower, just past noon. Peaked guest traffic, kids running in all directions, parents juggling towels and sunscreen. Jackson was stationed nearby with a trash picker when he heard the thud. A boy, maybe 8, had slipped on the slick concrete landing at the base of the slide. He scraped his knee and let out a loud cry, blood trickling in thin rivulets down his shin. His mother rushed to him, alarmed but calm, asking for help. Eli Foster, who had just finished boasting to a nearby teenager about his killer tan, swaggered over and glanced at the injury. "He's fine," Eli said with a shrug. "Slide burns happen, just rinse it off. You're good to go." The mother frowned. "Aren't you supposed to file something, an accident report?" Eli chuckled. "Ma'am, if we did paperwork every time a kid got a scrape, we'd never run this place." Jackson, watching from a few feet away, felt his jaw tighten. This wasn't just poor judgment, it was dismissal. The mother looked unconvinced, but nodded reluctantly. Then Carla appeared. Clipboard in hand, she knelt beside the child with a clean towel and an antiseptic wipe. "Let me take a quick report," she said gently. "It'll just take a moment." "Carla, seriously," he snapped. "You want to file a whole report for a scrape? This isn't a hospital. Let it go." Carla looked up, her mouth pressed in a firm line. "We're supposed to document every guest injury," she replied. "That's what the handbook says." Eli gave a tight smile to the mother and muttered something about overzealous new hires, then stalked off, leaving Carla to finish the report alone. Jackson's eyes followed Eli, his blood simmering. This wasn't just brushing off a scraped knee, this was a pattern. Deny the report, downplay the damage, keep the paper trail clean. If that boy had twisted an ankle or hit his head instead, would anyone have acted? Carla had done the right thing, and for that, she'd been belittled in front of a guest. Jackson stepped over to help her retrieve the first aid kit from the nearby Lifeguard booth. She gave him a grateful glance, but said nothing. He didn't need her to. In that moment, he knew he had crossed a line too, not just as a fake employee, but as a leader. This was no longer just an observation mission. This was a breach of trust, and he was going to fix it. Later that afternoon, during a lull in foot traffic, Jackson found himself sweeping near the snack stand when he spotted Carla wiping down a register. Her movements were practiced but tense, her eyes scanning the crowd between tasks. When she caught him looking, she gave a polite nod, then hesitated, as if deciding whether to speak. "You're new, right?" she asked, her voice low. "Jay, right?" Jackson nodded. Carla looked around to make sure no supervisors were near, then leaned in slightly. "Don't take it personally if things seem off. It's not you. It's the way things are run here." Jackson responded carefully. "I noticed that kid's injury earlier. You were just doing your job." Carla let out a breath, something between a laugh and a sigh. "That's what I thought too. First couple months I tried to follow policy by the book. Guest safety reports, refund forms, even food allergy notes. But Dean, our manager, he just wants smooth numbers. Too many complaints means corporate interference. That's what he told me." She hesitated again, as if checking how far she could trust him. "Did you know they raised the food prices at the kiosk last week without updating the signs?" she added. "Families come to the register thinking they're paying one price and end up getting overcharged by $2 or $3. I brought it up, got told it's dynamic pricing." Her voice had an edge now. "I watched a dad walk away today with a crying kid because he couldn't afford a pretzel and a soda. That's not dynamic. That's dirty." Jackson felt a cold weight settle in his chest. Carla wasn't just complaining. She was trying, quietly, consistently, to do the right thing in a place that punished integrity, and no one had listened. "Why stay?" he asked. Her eyes flicked toward the guest services booth. "Because if people like me leave, there's no one left to push back." Her words landed hard. This wasn't just about policies. It was about a culture where the wrong people were rewarded and the right ones were slowly worn down. Carla didn't know who he really was, but in that moment, she reminded Jackson of the employees he and his brother used to fight for, the kind who cared, even when it cost them something. As she returned to work, he watched her with renewed clarity. She didn't just deserve protection, she deserved a voice, and maybe, just maybe, she was the key to saving this park. By the end of the week, the tension Jackson had been tracking finally reached its breaking point. It was a sweltering Saturday afternoon, and the park was operating at near capacity. Lines snaking around the main slides, families crammed under shade umbrellas, and lifeguards shouting over the roar of water jets. Jackson had taken post near the entrance to Cyclone Falls, the park's most popular high-speed slide, when he noticed the growing line of frustrated guests. The ride had been shut down for over an hour with no announcements and no clear signage. A staff member quietly told Jackson that Eli had ordered the closure, claiming routine maintenance, but something didn't add up. Moments later, Jackson caught sight of a maintenance tech exiting the pump housing, tool belt still on, expression tight. Jackson casually struck up a conversation, playing dumb. "Hot day to be fixing stuff, huh?" The tech gave a short laugh. "Would have been easier if they hadn't ignored my report last week. That slide was flagged for pressure fluctuation 3 days ago. Nobody followed up until a guest almost hit the side wall." Jackson's stomach turned. This wasn't miscommunication, it was willful neglect. He stood in silence for a beat, watching as guests fanned themselves impatiently and kids whined for answers. Eli walked by minutes later, slicking back his hair and assuring a concerned mother that it was just a clogged filter. Jackson could barely contain himself. He wanted to rip off the disguise, call Eli out on the spot, but he held back. Not yet. Not until he understood the whole picture. That evening, after the park emptied out, Jackson walked the perimeter alone. The distant echo of the wave machine pulsed like a heartbeat. He passed by the storage building, the cracked concrete at the lazy river, the broken lock on the first aid cabinet he had noted 2 days before. In every corner, signs of a culture that had stopped caring. As the sky dimmed to a soft orange and the last of the guests filtered out, Jackson stopped near the Lifeguard tower and looked up at the night's first stars. "This place was supposed to be safe," he murmured. "Fun, honest." He thought of his brother, how proud they had been of building something for families. Now, it felt like betrayal. He had enough. No more watching, no more silence. Tomorrow, he will stop pretending, and everything was going to change. Sunday morning brought with it a suffocating heat and a strange stillness in the air, like the park itself sensed something was about to break. Jackson reported for duty in his usual disguise. Shaggy beach wig, mirrored sunglasses, lifeguard shirt, faded by intentional distress. But today he wasn't there to observe. He was waiting. The moment arrived near the splash pad, where Eli Foster was once again posturing like a king among rookies. A junior lifeguard, barely out of high school, quietly raised concern about a toddler who had slipped and was limping. "He's not bleeding, is he?" Eli snapped. "Then get back to your post. We're here to guard slides, not babysit every teardrop." The young guard hesitated. Eli leaned in, voice sharp. "You want to keep your hours or not?" That was it. Jackson stepped forward calmly, letting the silence gather around him. Kids played, water cannons blasted, but a few nearby staff and parents sensed the shift. Without a word, Jackson pulled off his sunglasses, then the wig, and finally he unzipped the top of his faded shirt to reveal a crisp Cascade Bay logo embroidered beneath. Murmurs began. Eli blinked in confusion. "What?" Jackson's voice cut clean through the humid air. "My name is Jackson Rivera. I built this park, and I just watched you intimidate a lifeguard into ignoring a child's injury." The world stopped for a breath. Parents froze mid-step. A few staff gasped audibly. Eli went pale. I didn't know," he stammered. "You didn't care to know," Jackson snapped. "You lied to guests, ignored maintenance warnings, and turned this place into a liability factory, and you did it wearing my name on your chest." Eli tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked. "It's just hustle. You know how sales work. Keep it moving, keep it smiling." Jackson took a step closer, unblinking. "This isn't a used car lot. It's a water park full of children. You gamble with safety, and you're done." Dean, the park manager, finally emerged from the main office looking rattled. "Mr. Rivera, had I known you were coming," Jackson cut him off with a glare. "That's the problem. You didn't know. You haven't known anything for a long time." He turned to face the staff and the small crowd now gathering. "Emergency meeting, 15 minutes. Staff lounge." He paused, gaze sweeping across the team. "If you care about this place, be there. If you don't bother showing up." And just like that, Jackson walked off, leaving Eli standing in his shadow. The staff lounge was filled with uneasy silence, broken only by the hum of the overhead fan and the occasional nervous shuffle of feet. Lifeguards, kiosk workers, receptionists, everyone showed up, unsure of what to expect. Carla stood near the door, arms crossed tightly, while Dean lingered by the water cooler, trying to appear composed. Eli, no longer cocky, sat with his arms folded and eyes downcast. Jackson entered last, now fully himself, no disguise, no pretense. He scanned the room, the weight of authority settling in like a storm cloud. "What happened this week wasn't an isolated slip-up," he began, voice steady. "It was a symptom of a deeper problem, one that's been allowed to grow under my watch, and I take responsibility for that." Dean shifted. "We've hit our numbers every season, Jackson. Families keep coming back. Maybe there have been some oversights, but nothing we can't fix." Jackson turned sharply toward him. "Oversights? A child was almost injured because your head lifeguard ignored a flagged safety report. Another was brushed off after falling because we don't have time for paperwork. We've got overcharged guests, ghosted complaints, and staff afraid to speak up. This isn't an oversight, it's rot." He motioned to Carla. "Tell them what you told me." Carla's eyes widened, but she stepped forward, voice low but firm. "I've seen refund forms disappear. I've had guests cry because they couldn't get anyone to listen. I've had staff tell me to keep quiet or risk losing shifts. And every time I raised it, Dean said we couldn't afford the bad optics." A hush fell over the room. Eli rolled his eyes. "Oh, come on, it's business, we're not saints." Everyone here bent a rule or two. Jackson's tone cut like steel. "There's a difference between bending a rule and betraying trust. You put people at risk, and you trained others to do the same." Dean started to speak, but Jackson held up a hand. "Eli, you're suspended effective immediately. You'll be contacted by HR." He turned to Dean. "You've got 24 hours to submit a full report on safety compliance, guest incident logs, and staff complaints from the past 6 months. If I don't like what I see, I'll be looking for a new park manager." He looked around the room. "Anyone who can't follow basic integrity won't have a place here. But if you care, if you want to make this park better, you'll have my full support." And with that, the trial was over. The verdict? Change starts now. The following morning, the energy across Cascade Bay felt different. Tense but alert, as if everyone was waiting to see if Jackson's promises had been real. They were. Before gates opened, Jackson gathered the entire team under the shaded pavilion near the wave pool. He stood beside Carla, now wearing a new badge that read Guest Experience Lead. "We're not patching holes anymore," Jackson announced. "We're rebuilding the foundation." What followed was the rollout of the park's new initiative, Safe Splash, a comprehensive overhaul of procedures meant to restore trust and accountability. Staff would receive fresh training in ethical guest service, incident reporting would be digitized and transparent, and guest kiosks would allow real-time feedback anonymously if needed. All frontline workers were encouraged to escalate concerns directly to corporations without fear of retaliation. Some employees looked inspired, others are skeptical. A few, the ones who had benefited most from the previous culture, looked uneasy. Jackson addressed it head-on. This might make some things harder before it makes them better. That's the cost of doing things right. If you're only here to skate by, this place won't be for you anymore. But if you're here to protect people, to make families feel safe again, you'll have every resource I can give. He turned to Carla. She spoke up when others stayed quiet. That's leadership. That's what we need more of. In the days that followed, change didn't come easily, but it came. The first morning, Carla caught 2 kiosk staff shortchanging guests on meal upgrades and corrected it on the spot, citing the new policy manual. A lifeguard, emboldened by the shift, reported a broken step on the splash tower, something they might have ignored before. Dean, now under watch but still in place, began holding daily safety briefings, clearly rattled but trying to adapt. Jackson stayed visible, walking the park floor, asking staff how they felt, how guests were responding. He didn't just want the paperwork fixed, he wanted the culture felt. At one point he pulled Carla aside. "You're going to get pushback," he warned. "People don't always like change, especially when it makes them honest." Carla smiled slightly, resolved behind her eyes. "Let them push," she said. "We'll push back with better." For the first time in a long while, Jackson felt something stir in him. Not relief, not victory, but hope. The kind of hope that comes when you stop salvaging and start rebuilding, for real. 2 weeks later, Cascade Bay was no longer just functioning, it was evolving. The once faded energy of the park had begun to pulse with something new: accountability, pride, and cautious optimism. The murals had been repainted, safety signage was updated, and staff wore fresh uniforms with "Safe Splash Team" stitched beneath the park's logo. Jackson walked the grounds without a disguise now, nodding to employees who, though still adjusting, seemed to stand a little taller, speak a little clearer. He paused near the splash pad, where a young lifeguard gently helped a child to her feet after she slipped. She smiled and escorted the girl to first aid, filling out a digital report on her handheld device. No hesitation, no cover-up, just professionalism. Nearby, Carla stood under a shaded kiosk, clipboard in hand, calmly speaking with a family whose child had a gluten allergy. She handed them a printed list of safe menu items, something she had initiated herself, and thanked them for visiting. The father smiled and said, "You're the first place that's taken this seriously." Jackson watched with quiet pride. This wasn't about profits anymore. It was about trust, and trust, he had come to realize, couldn't be delegated. It had to be earned, day by day. Dean, still under close supervision, had adapted in small ways. He now ran morning huddles and was learning to listen more than talk. Whether he'd stay long-term was uncertain, but for now he was trying. And that mattered. Not everyone had made it through the transition, and a few others followed, but those who remained had chosen integrity over inertia. Jackson could feel it in the small things. The way staff greeted guests with sincerity, how quickly spills were cleaned, how freely feedback was given without fear. That afternoon, Jackson found himself sitting on a bench overlooking the lazy river, the same spot where he had first doubted everything. Now laughter drifted on the breeze and the air carried less tension, more joy. Carla walked by, spotted him, and offered a nod, steady, knowing. He returned it with a smile. "How's it feeling?" she asked. Jackson leaned back, soaking in the sight of the park in motion. "Like it's finally ours again," he said. And as the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting golden light across the rippling water, Jackson knew one thing for certain: Cascade Bay had changed, and this time, it was for good. The story of Cascade Bay teaches a powerful lesson about leadership, accountability, and the courage it takes to do the right thing even when no one is watching. At its core, it reminds us that no business, no matter how successful, can afford to lose sight of its founding values. When leaders become distant, when corners are cut for convenience or profit, the real cost is trust, and once that's gone, it's hard to earn back. Jackson Rivera's journey from detached CEO to hands-on reformer shows that real change starts from the top, but it must be modeled through action, not just policy. By going undercover, he reconnected with the heartbeat of his company, the employees on the ground, and the families they serve. And in Carla, we see the quiet strength of integrity, proof that one voice, when brave enough, can inspire systemic transformation. The story teaches that culture is shaped not by the loudest voices, but by the consistent choices of those who care. It's a call to all leaders, young or old. If you want something to stand for generations, you must be willing to stand inside it, fix what's broken, and fight for what's right.